I want to bring in my first guest tonight, Congressman Ed Case. He is a Democrat from Hawaii. Yes, especially at this time of the calendar year, we're all envious of you, particularly the brutal weather on the East Coast, but we're not envious of what you're dealing with on the Hill. You know, there seems to be such a disconnect, Congressman, between the obvious need through no fault of their own that tens of millions of Americans are going through. And here we are towards the end of December now, and we can't get a stimulus package through, and now we're possibly looking at a government shutdown. What can you tell us about the state of negotiations right now?
Well, first of all, it's tragic that we haven't gotten a second emergency assistance package done by now. I don't think there could be a better example to the American people of dysfunction in your government. The House, we passed the HEROES Act in May. And so, you know, that's been on the table for months and months now. We saw the need for it at the time, and we all could not get it done earlier than this. Now, one could say that it was complicated by the election or by deep political and policy disagreements. But with that level of need across the country, you would think that we'd be able to pull this together a lot earlier than this. And in fact, what it took was a group that wasn't part of the leadership of either the House or the Senate to really put together some proposals that were reasonable and difficult compromises, but nonetheless compromises that would actually get the deal done. And that's where the negotiations stand right now. I think we're down to the final strokes of it. I certainly hope so. I believe so. But until I see the deal itself, I'm not going to say it's a done deal.
You know, Congressman, I'm sure you saw the reporting as well that apparently this week, President Trump was pushing to expand significantly checks going out to individuals here to even the tune of $2,000 reportedly, and was talked out of it by aides. Listen, the easiest thing to do in Washington is to spend money. In this particular case, you know, scope is critical. I don't get the opposition, particularly because we know it works. It worked with the first round of stimulus. Why are Republicans resisting making this a bigger package?
I don't know. I'm not in the heads of the folks that are resisting making this a bigger package. I'm one of the people that believe we need meaningful relief throughout our country. I certainly need it here in Hawaii, with one of the most severely economically impacted regions in our entire country. And so I don't understand the overall policy goal, I suppose, in their head of limiting emergency assistance. I guess I could understand, at least I don't agree with it, understand objections to further assistance to specific parts of the package. State and local government funding, I think, is essential, but I understand that some people may not agree with that. But I really don't understand the reluctance on the direct stimulus payments to Americans, which were a real godsend in the middle part of this year, and I think they're desperately needed today. And so I think it's really less about the stimulus payments themselves, where I think there is consensus in Congress to proceed with those stimulus payments, and it is more about the actual overall cost of that package.
And I'll go one better, state aid. I certainly don't have to educate you about the state you represent, but I'm speaking to governors from, by the way, red states too, as well as obviously from blue states. They are hemorrhaging money, and if this government doesn't come through with state aid in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to be firing law enforcement and first responders and cutting aid to hospitals. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard of.
The National Governors Association, on a completely nonpartisan basis, has endorsed aid to state and local governments, further assistance to state and local governments. The National Conference of Mayors, on a completely nonpartisan basis. State and local governments know the acute dilemma that they face. You know, the apparent omission of further aid to state and local governments is going to be critical to those governments, and it's really going to hurt. For example, let's just take one concrete example from what I face right here in Hawaii. Again, one of the most severely economically impacted states in our entire country, and that is being felt in government funding, government financing. So support from our federal government for that is critical. And yet, my governor is having to face furloughs right now because there just isn't the financing to maintain a full workforce in areas that are critical, for example, distribution of vaccine. Critical, for example, in the processing of unemployment claims, where we have one of the highest pro rata unemployment claim rates in the entire country. And so they're forced to these difficult choices that, frankly, they shouldn't have to be forced to. This is the time that the federal government is really the only place that is available for our country in all components, including our state and local governments, to get us through.
Again, I don't expect you to speak for others, but President-elect Biden has talked repeatedly about the need to work across the aisle here and to find a cooperation in a new Washington. He believes, it seems, that once the fever of Trump passes, that there'll be a new reality in Washington. But 2/3 of your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, with 18 attorney generals, they supported that crazy Texas suit that would have disenfranchised more than 10 million Americans with no evidence whatsoever to support it. My question is, do they believe that? Or is this just something of a political, Potomac two-step they'll do for another few weeks until late January, and then reality will set in? What are we dealing with? You're closer to it than us at home. It doesn't make any sense what we're seeing, but is it something they believe in or something they're just doing for political expediency?
I think it falls into two camps. First of all, there's the camp of true believers. These are folks, I think in the minority, by the way, of the Republican caucus, who simply do believe in their hearts that there was widespread, massive fraud in the election, notwithstanding that 50 states on a bipartisan, nonpartisan basis certified the results, notwithstanding that there's virtually every single court case of 70 or 80 of them has been decided against the Trump campaign, and notwithstanding the clear popular vote margin and the Electoral College certification. Now, I think for the remainder of them, it's just a very, very difficult political calculation that if they don't fall in line with the orthodoxy that is coming out of the president, that they are going to be severely at risk in their own elections, in their own states, in their own constituencies from that part of their primary election constituencies that remain with the mindset of the president. And so I think that's really more the calculation than anything else. And yes, I am very much hoping that once the election clears and the inauguration occurs and we move into the 117th Congress, that we will actually see a set aside of all of that, and we'll get back to work, and we'll see whether we can, in fact, improve working across the aisle and finding those bipartisan solutions that President Biden certainly wants to find.
Well, I sure hope you're right. And in the holiday season, I'm going to hold out hope here, certainly for that overdue stimulus package, because as you know better than anybody, we and so many people desperately need it. But Congressman, best of luck and thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Aloha.